The gun pressed cold against her temple as the man in the silk suit smiled at her like she was already dead. "You have exactly
I
3
don't know
seconds to
where
tell
he
me where he is," he said in perfect English, his accent barely detectable. 1. Keisha Williams didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She looked him dead in his eyes and said, "I don't know any he. I'm a waitress. I serve coffee and eggs. Now get that thing out of my face before I scream so loud every cop in Chicago comes running." The man laughed. Actually laughed. And then he lowered the gun. "Wrong answer," he said. "But interesting." The restaurant door slammed open behind them, and Keisha watched the color drain from her attacker's face. She didn't need to turn around to know someone powerful had just walked in. Someone more powerful than the man who'd been ready to kill her 3 seconds ago. A voice cut through the silence like ice. Cold. Controlled. Deadly. "Park. What do you think you're doing with my waitress? If you're watching this and you're already hooked, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and drop a like. While you're at it, comment where you're watching from and what time it is. I love reading those comments. Now let's get back to this story because it's about to get intense." The man called Park stepped back immediately, his gun disappearing inside his jacket so fast Keisha almost thought she'd imagined it. But she hadn't imagined it. The cold circle still burned against her skin like a brand. "Mr. Kang," Park said, bowing his head slightly. "I was just asking this woman some questions." "With a gun to her head?" The voice came closer, and Keisha finally turned around. She'd expected old. She'd expected rough. She'd expected the kind of face that matched the word Mafia in her mind. What she saw instead made her breath catch despite herself. He was young. Maybe 30, maybe younger. Korean, with sharp features and darker eyes that seemed to absorb all the light in the room. He wore a black coat that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent, and he moved like someone who had never been afraid of anything in his entire life. He also looked at her like he was seeing straight through her skin and into her bones. "You're bleeding," he said. Keisha touched her temple. Her fingers came away red. Park's gun must have broken the skin when he pressed it against her. She hadn't even felt it. "I'm fine," she said, her voice steady even though her heart was racing. "And I don't know who either of you are, but this restaurant is closed. We've been closed for 20 minutes. So whatever business you have with each other, take it outside." Park made a sound like a choked laugh. "You don't talk to Mr. Kang that way." "I talk however I want," Keisha shot back. "This is America. And last I checked, pointing guns at innocent women is illegal." The man called Mr. Kang raised his hand, and Park went silent immediately. Like a dog brought to heel. Keisha watched the exchange with growing unease. Whatever this was, whoever these people were, she was way out of her depth. But she'd be damned if she let them see her scared. "What's your name?" Mr. Kang asked. "None of your business." "Your name tag says Keisha." She crossed her arms. "Then why'd you ask?" Something flickered in his eyes. It might have been amusement. It might have been something else entirely. Whatever it was, it made Keisha's skin prickle in a way she didn't like. "Keisha," he repeated, like he was tasting the syllables. "I apologize for my associate's behavior." He was looking for someone. Clearly, he made a mistake. Clearly. Mr. Kang reached into his coat, and Keisha tensed. But he only pulled out a card. Plain black. No name. Just a phone number embossed in silver. "For your trouble," he said. "If you ever need anything." Keisha stared at the card but didn't take it. "I don't need anything from men who put guns to people's heads." "I didn't put a gun to your head." "He did. And he's going to pay for that." The way he said it made Park flinch visibly. "But I'm offering anyway." "Take it." "No." His eyebrow raised slightly. "No?" "That's what I said. I don't want your card. I don't want your money. I don't want whatever it is you're selling. I want you to leave so I can lock up and go home. Silence stretched between them. Park looked like he was about to have a stroke. But Mr. Kang just stood there, watching her with those unreadable eyes, and then slowly, he smiled. It transformed his face completely. Made him look younger. Made him look almost human. Interesting, he said. The same word Park had used. But it sounded different coming from him. Heavier. More dangerous. He placed the card on the counter anyway and turned to leave. Park followed immediately, practically running to open the door for him. But at the threshold, Mr. Kang paused and looked back. I'll see you again, Keisha. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a hope. It was a statement of fact. Like the sun would rise, like winter would come, he would see her again. The door closed behind them, and Keisha let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking. Her temple was still bleeding. And on the counter, that black card sat like a promise and a threat all at once. She should throw it away. She should call the police. She should do 100 reasonable things that a reasonable person would do when they'd just been held at gunpoint by men in expensive suits. Instead, she picked up the card and slipped it into her apron pocket. She didn't know why. She told herself it was evidence. Just in case. But somewhere deep down, in a place she didn't want to examine, she knew that wasn't the whole truth. 3 weeks later, Keisha was still telling herself she'd imagined the whole thing. She worked her shifts. She served her tables. She smiled at customers and counted her tips and tried not to think about the black card burning a hole in her nightstand drawer. She had bills to pay. She had her grandmother's medical expenses piling up. She had a little brother who needed school supplies and a mother who'd been dead for 5 years and a father who'd never been around at all. She didn't have time for mysterious men with cold eyes and dangerous smiles. But then the flowers started arriving. The first bouquet was simple. White roses. No card. She threw them away and told herself they were a mistake. The second bouquet was larger. Red roses this time, with a small envelope attached. Inside was a check for $50,000 and 4 words in elegant handwriting, for your grandmother's care. Keisha's hands trembled as she stared at the number. $50,000. That was more money than she'd seen in her entire life. That was her grandmother's surgery. Her medications. The specialist they'd been trying to get an appointment with for months. And it came from him. She knew it without needing confirmation. She could feel it. She didn't cash the check. But she didn't throw it away either. The third bouquet arrived with a note that said, I know you won't take it. That's why I made a donation directly to the hospital. Your grandmother's surgery is scheduled for next Tuesday. My card is still in your drawer. Use it. Keisha read the note 4 times. Then she called the hospital. They confirmed everything. An anonymous donor had covered all costs. Full payment. No strings attached. She didn't know whether to scream or cry or throw something. She settled for all 3. That night, at 11 p.m., she pulled out the black card and dialed the number. He answered on the first ring. Hello, Keisha. His voice was the same. Cold and controlled and somehow intimate, like he'd been waiting for exactly this call at exactly this moment. How did you know it was me? She demanded. This is a private line. Only you have this number. That doesn't make me feel better. It wasn't meant to. She gripped the phone tighter. What do you want from me? Nothing you're not willing to give. Then why? Why the flowers? Why the money? Why any of this? There was a pause. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Softer. Almost vulnerable. Because I saw something in you that night. Something I haven't seen in a long time. What? Courage. Real courage. The kind that comes from somewhere deep. You had a gun to your head, and you didn't break. You didn't beg. You looked at death and told it to go to hell. Another pause. I've been surrounded by powerful people my whole life, Keisha. Men who would kill on command. Women who would do anything for money. But none of them have ever had what you have. Keisha's throat was tight. And what's that? A spine that can't be bought. She didn't know what to say. She'd been ready to yell at him. To demand he leave her alone. To tell him she wanted nothing to do with his world or his money or whatever twisted game he was playing. But his words had knocked the anger right out of her. I can't be part of your world, she finally said. Whatever you're involved in, whatever you are, I can't. I'm not asking you to be part of my world. Then what are you asking? I'm asking you to have dinner with me. Tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. I'll send a car. No. Keisha. I said no. I'm not some toy you can buy with flowers and checks. I'm not impressed by your money or your cars or your men with guns. I'm a waitress from the South Side. I work 60 hours a week. I take care of my family. And I don't have time for whatever this is. Then make time. Excuse me? I said make time. One dinner. One conversation. After that, if you want me to disappear, I will. You'll never see me again. But I'm asking for one chance. That's all. Keisha should have said no again. She should have hung up. She should have done 100 things that didn't involve agreeing to dinner with a man who was clearly dangerous, clearly powerful, and clearly used to getting whatever he wanted. But something in his voice stopped her. Something that sounded almost desperate. Almost human. One dinner, she heard herself say. That's it. That's all I'm asking. She hung up before she could change her mind. The car he sent was black and sleek and probably cost more than her apartment building. The driver opened the door for her without a word, and Keisha slid into the leather interior feeling like she was dreaming. She'd worn her best dress. Not because she wanted to impress him, she told herself. But because if she was going to walk into the lion's den, she was going to do it looking like a queen. The restaurant he'd chosen was on the top floor of a building she'd never known existed. Private elevator. Private entrance. A single table set by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. And there he was. Standing by the window. Watching her walk in. You came, he said. I said I would. People say a lot of things they don't mean. I'm not people. That smile again. The one that transformed him. No. You're not. He pulled out her chair himself. Poured her wine. And for a long moment, they just sat there, looking at each other across the candlelit table. So, Keisha said finally. Are you going to tell me who you are? Really? My name is Jae-won Kang. I run the Kang organization. We have interests in shipping, real estate, and several other industries. Industries, she repeated. Is that what we're calling it? His expression didn't change. We also have interests in things that are less legal. I won't lie to you about that. You deserve honesty. So you are what I think you are. I'm exactly what you think I am. Keisha set down her wine glass. Then why am I here? What could you possibly want with a waitress from the South Side? I already told you. I saw something in you. That's not enough of an answer. Jae-won leaned forward. In my world, everyone wants something. Money. Power. Protection. They come to me with their hands out and their eyes calculating. They smile and they bow and they tell me what they think I want to hear. And I play along because that's how the game works. But I'm tired, Keisha. I'm tired of the games. I'm tired of the lies. And then I walked into that restaurant and saw you staring down my lieutenant like he was nothing. Like you didn't care who he worked for or what he could do to you. And for the first time in years, I felt something other than exhaustion. Keisha's heart was beating too fast. What did you feel? Curiosity. And something else I'm still trying to name. This is insane, she said. You know that, right? This whole thing is insane. You can't just decide you're interested in someone and start sending flowers and paying hospital bills. That's not how normal people work. I've never claimed to be normal. Obviously. The food arrived then, and Keisha was grateful for the interruption. She needed a moment to process. To think. To remind herself that she was supposed to be getting through this dinner and then walking away forever. But watching him now, in this light, with his guard down and his eyes soft, she couldn't deny that something was shifting in her chest. Something dangerous. All right, let me pause here for a second. What do you think Keisha should do? Trust him or run? Let me know in the comments. Now let's get back to the story. They talked for 3 hours. Not about his business. Not about her struggles. They talked about music and movies and the books they'd read as children. She learned that he'd grown up in Seoul before moving to America at 16, that his father had been a cruel man, that his mother had died when he was young. He learned about her grandmother's strength, her brother's dreams, her own secret hope to one day go back to school. And somewhere between the main course and the dessert, Keisha realized she'd stopped wanting to leave. That terrified her more than anything else. I should go, she said abruptly, pushing back from the table. Jae-won's expression shifted. Concern. Disappointment. Something else. Was it something I said? No. That's the problem. It wasn't anything you said. It's that I'm sitting here forgetting who you are. What you are. And I can't afford to do that. She stood, and he stood with her. Let me at least walk you to the car. I'll walk myself. She was halfway to the elevator when his voice stopped her. Keisha. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. What? You said one dinner. I promised if you wanted me to disappear, I would. Is that what you want? The question hung in the air. Heavy. Loaded. Everything depending on her answer. She should say yes. She knew she should say yes. It was the only safe choice. The only smart choice. But when she opened her mouth, a different word came out. No. She heard him exhale. Felt his presence coming closer. And then he was behind her, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. Then let me prove to you that I'm more than what you think I am. Let me show you who I could be with someone who makes me want to be better. Keisha finally turned around. They were inches apart. His eyes were searching hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. I'm not going to make this easy for you, she said. I'm not going to fall at your feet because you have money and power. I don't want you to fall at my feet. What do you want? I want you to stand. Just like you've always stood. And let me stand beside you. It was possibly the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her. And it came from a man who, by all rights, should have been the last person on earth she should trust. She made a decision in that moment. A crazy, probably stupid, definitely dangerous decision. Fine, she said. But we do this my way. No more surprise gifts. No more anonymous donations. You want to see me, you ask like a normal person. You pick me up from my apartment, not in some ridiculous car, and you treat me like a regular woman. Not a prize to be won. Done. And I swear to God, if I find out you've hurt someone, if I find out you're as bad as the stories say, I'm gone. No second chances. No explanations. Gone. Understood. She searched his face for deception and found none. Either he was telling the truth or he was the best liar she'd ever met. Okay then, she said. I guess I'll see you around, Jae-won Kang. His name felt strange on her tongue. But also right in a way she couldn't explain. The next few months were a blur. True to his word, Jae-won showed up at her door like a regular man. No entourage. No expensive gifts. Just him, in jeans and a simple shirt, asking if she wanted to get coffee. They went to her favorite diner. They walked along the lakefront. They sat in her tiny apartment and watched terrible movies while her little brother Marcus watched them with suspicious eyes. "He's different," Marcus said one night, after Jae-won had left. "He's not like the guys from the neighborhood." "That's because he's not from the neighborhood." "Is he good to you?" Keisha thought about the way Jae-won looked at her. The way he listened when she talked. The way he touched her hand like she was something precious. "Yeah," she said. "He's good to me. But nothing stays simple forever." It started with a phone call in the middle of the night. Jae-won's voice was different. Hard. Cold. The voice she'd heard that first night in the restaurant. "I need you to not call me for a few days." "Why?" "What's happening?" "Business. Nothing you need to worry about." Jae-won. "I mean it, Keisha. Don't call. Don't text. Stay home from work if you can. Just trust me." The line went dead before she could respond. She didn't hear from him for 5 days. 5 days of silence. 5 days of checking her phone every 5 minutes. 5 days of imagining the worst. On the 6th day, he showed up at her door. His lip was split. There was a bandage on his temple. And when she tried to touch his face, he flinched. "What happened?" she demanded, pulling him inside. "What's going on?" "There was a problem with a rival organization. It's handled now." "Handled how?" He didn't answer. Jae-won. "Handled how?" "You don't want to know." She stared at him. Saw the exhaustion in his eyes. The weight on his shoulders. The walls going up between them. "You promised me honesty," she said quietly. "I promised you I wouldn't hurt anyone innocent. I kept that promise. But there are things in my world that I can't protect you from knowing. Things that would change how you look at me. What if I want to know anyway? Then you'd be making a choice you can't take back. And I don't want to be responsible for that." They stood there in her cramped living room, the weight of 2 worlds pressing down on them. "Tell me one thing," Keisha said finally. "The people who did this to you. Are they going to come back?" "No." "Are you sure?" He met her eyes. "I'm sure." She didn't ask how he was sure. She didn't want to know. Instead, she took his hand and led him to her couch and sat with him in silence until the sun came up. That was the night she realized she was in love with him. And that was the night she realized it might destroy her. But she didn't leave. She couldn't. Because somewhere along the line, he'd become her person. The one she thought about when she woke up. The one she reached for in the dark. The one whose voice could calm her when everything else felt like chaos. 6 months later, he proposed. Not with a ring. Not with flowers. He proposed with a question asked in the quiet of her grandmother's hospital room, after the surgery had healed and the doctors had said she'd live another 20 years. "I want to build a life with you," he said. "A real life. Not what my father built. Not what my grandfather built. Something different. Something clean. I've been working on it for months. Legitimate investments. Proper channels. It won't be easy. It'll take years. But I want to do it. And I want to do it with you." Keisha's eyes were wet. "You're serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "What about your people? Your organization? They won't just let you walk away." "I'm not walking away. I'm changing course. There are enough of us who want something different. A new generation. We just needed a reason to push for it." He took her hand. "You're my reason." She should have said yes immediately. Should have fallen into his arms and accepted everything he was offering. But Keisha had never been the type to make easy choices. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them." "I want Marcus in a good school. A real school. Not because you're paying people off, but because he earned it. Done. I want my grandmother in a proper home. With nurses who actually care. I'll visit every day, and I want to be able to bring her here whenever she's feeling up to it. Done. And I want to finish my degree. I want to do something that matters. Not just be a wife to a powerful man. You were never going to be just anything, Keisha. She looked at him then. Really looked at him. At the man who'd started as a threat and become her sanctuary. At the dangerous stranger who'd become the safest person she knew. Yes, she said finally. My answer is yes. He didn't cry. But his eyes got bright in a way she'd never seen before. And when he kissed her, there in her grandmother's hospital room with the heart monitor beeping steadily in the background, she knew she'd made the right choice. Before I finish this story, if you've made it this far, you're clearly invested. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I've got more stories like this coming, and you don't want to miss them. Now let's finish this. The wedding was small. Close family. A few trusted friends. Keisha wore white, and Jae-won looked at her like she'd hung the moon. Park was there, the same man who'd held a gun to her head almost 2 years earlier. He stood near the back, his expression unreadable. After the ceremony, he approached her. Mrs. Kang, he said, bowing slightly. Don't, she said. Don't call me that. His face flickered with confusion. My name is Keisha. You can use it. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Keisha, he repeated. I wanted to apologize. For that night. I didn't know who you were. Would it have mattered if you did? He didn't answer. That's what I thought. She stepped closer. I'm in this now. All the way. But let me be clear about something. I'm not going to pretend your world is something it isn't. I'm not going to look the other way when things get ugly. And I'm definitely not going to be the kind of wife who stays silent and obedient. So if you've got a problem with that, now's the time to say it. Park's expression shifted. Respect, maybe. Or something close to it. No problem, he said. I think maybe you're exactly what this family needs. We'll see. She walked away from him and into her husband's arms. And as Jae-won held her close, she felt, for the first time in her life, like she'd finally found where she belonged. It wasn't perfect. It was never going to be perfect. There were still battles to fight. Still dangers to face. Still nights when Jae-won came home with shadows in his eyes and she didn't ask questions. But there was also love. Real love. The kind that grows in impossible soil and blooms anyway. The kind that looks at two people from different worlds and says, yes. You. Together. 3 years later, Keisha stood in the nursery of their home, holding their daughter in her arms. Jae-won stood behind her, his chin on her shoulder, looking down at the tiny face that was the perfect blend of both of them. She has your eyes, he said. She has your stubbornness. He laughed. Fair enough. Outside, the city sparkled. Inside, everything was warm. I still don't want your empire, you know, Keisha said softly. I know. I never wanted your money or your power or any of it. I know that too. What I wanted was this. You. A family. A life that belongs to us. He turned her gently in his arms. Looked at her the way he'd looked at her since that first night. Like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. You have it, he said. All of it. Forever. And she knew, in that moment, that she always would.